thank you guys all for joining us. I'm very excited here to say that we have some of the cast and crew of Winners Take All joining us. And we've got Ryan Mueller here with us, and Mel Vandy and Ryan Madela. And we're very excited to tell you we're joined by Fritz. Is it Kiersch or Kirsch?
Sheesh.
Well, Kiersch. Okay, I'm sorry.
Kiersch. El Jefe Grande.
I second guessed myself in the moment. We got Robert Krantz with us, and we got Jim Holley, Ultracross champion, 88 and 89. Did stunt work on the film, as well as Alex Martin, which you can see there behind him, a great admirer of Winners Take All and a racer himself, and collector of, I think, every existing prop that's still out there somewhere from the movie there behind him. So
except for this,
you don't have that, us. Well, this is a reproduction. It's not even from the flick. So, but Robert, if you're ever in Wisconsin again, we can get you to throw this on. Then it'll be screen used. You know what I'm saying? So,
Fritz, I was saying to them before you got on, when you first showed me, we were in pre-production. Fritz said, "Hey, come here once. I want to show you the uniforms." We walked in the back, and I looked at the uniforms. I'm like, it's pink. Bagley Robinson's going to get in a pink uniform, and Fritz is no. It's like a really cool magenta on film. It's going to be different. And I remember looking at the dailies, going, "Oh damn, it's pink." So it's pink. It looks like pink today. And how you got Bagley Robinson in a pink leotard, I don't know.
It's a manly pink.
That's right. Well, thank you guys all for being here and for joining us today. And so I'd love to go around, and if you could, there's not a lot of information. And when Alex reached out to me to say, "Hey, can we get some of the cast together?" Part of why we wanted to do this is there's almost nothing on the internet that talks about how the movie was made, any stories from behind the scenes or anything. And so if we could, I'd just like to hear from you guys as far as how the project came across your table. How did you first get involved with it? And just the beginnings of how it started to come together. And Fritz, if you want to start us off, that'd be great.
Holy cow. You know how old I am and remembering and all these things? Krantz knows. I believe just simply approached by the producers who had the funding through a new company called Apollo Pictures, they were kind of an outgrowth of the concept that American International Pictures had. Let's make teen movies for drive-in audiences, the genre products. And they had somehow identified the script as filling that concept. And so they said, "We've heard of you. We know you read this. Let's do this." And we came to an agreement. And I like the writer, and the I guess supervising producers were really good. The guys from Apollo had a particular direction in mind for a straight genre picture, and the producers were more in let's make a film about athleticism and so forth. Then I had an idea, and Krantz will talk about it, I'm sure, about a real concept of a movie with a real theme and beyond the genre expectations. So that's how it worked. And that set up kind of a difficulty, but it got me to meet Jim and brought Ernie Arsadi into the world again, and all kinds of great people, Debbie Evans and the actors, of course, and Deloise, Courtney Gains, and Gerardo, Yeah.
So I'm assuming you came across Jim because the decision was made early on, like we've got to get the best, obviously, riders and racers, and I'm assuming, Jim, that's how this came to you.
Yeah, I mean, Ernie Arsadi was the second unit stunt coordinator, and I was still a professional rider for Yamaha. I was coming off a world championship win. They said, "Do you want to, be a stunt guy?" And I said, "Well, let me check with Yamaha." There were some things that I could do, some things I couldn't do, like the race they had at the Dallas Supercross. I was still racing, so Richard Epper doubled me. I got into the Epper family, and that's what started my stunt career after my career. But great time with it. It was an excellent movie. Everybody was really excited. I know Robert Badley, he didn't like the pink. I remember that. But that was okay. And then I just remember one incident with I was doubling Peter DeLuise. And I remember one incident, for some reason I was up on the first unit, and Peter lost his goggles. He didn't have them or whatever, and he needed his, and I was doubling him. So I gave him mine. Well, as soon as I gave up my goggles, guess what happens? I get called up for second unit to do a stunt. Well, I don't have no goggles. So I go back to the wardrobe lady, and I said, hey, I need another set of goggles. And, they're calling for me. And she's giving me this, well, what do you guys do? All you stunt guys always take my stuff and never give it back. I go, lady, I am sponsored by Scott Goggles. They pay me a salary to endorse their products. I go, I need those goggles. And we literally, she had one end, I had the other end, and we're pulling back and forth on these set of goggles. And I finally wrestled them away, went up, did my stunt or whatever I was doing. And the next day when I came back to the set, I had one of my contacts from Scott Goggles, and I went up to her, I go, look, man, I hope you don't get upset yesterday when I pulled the goggles out, but look, I wasn't lying. I don't need your goggles. They give me plenty of goggles to career. They pay me a lot of money to use their goggles. So I'm sorry that Peter lost his, and I gave mine up to give to him. I didn't want to hold production.
You were flush in goggles. Yeah. So, Robert, how did you come across this project?
My agent submitted me at the time, and I remember I came in several times to read, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. And then it was an interesting thing. I was in acting class at the time, and I remember there was a director who was teaching this particular acting class, and he had just told us something. His mom was a therapist, and he said whenever they would get a couple together in the room, the therapist would listen, and if one of them was saying to the spouse, you don't see what I'm saying, I wish you could see what I want, that told the therapist everything to them was visual. Then the wife would answer something and say, well, I wish you could feel what I feel. I wish you could have better feelings. She was more tactile. And I think there was a third one too. And the teacher was saying, when you hear somebody and you're in a room with another actor and you hear certain words, if they're saying see, if they're saying feel, whatever it is, come to their level and you'll have a connection. And when I went in, I was reading with Don, and I forgot what the key word, but I heard it early on in the conversation with them. And so when we did our scene, it went extremely well. And we improvised something, as I recall.
Yeah.
And then I do remember, even after that, I'm thinking, that went really well. And somehow I ended up in the hallway talking to Fritz. And I can't remember what the conversation was, but all I remember saying is, "You won't have any problems with me on the set." Yes. And I've often wondered, did I hold up to that, Fritz?
Yes. Of all the things, I remember that very clearly. We kind of walked out together, something down the hall at Carol Jones's casting, and you said, "I want you to know," and you said that, and I thought, wow, no one's ever said that to me. Usually they say, like, where's my Lambo? And I don't have that.
So this wasn't a warning sign to you, Fritz?
No, it was a remark of genuine interest and collaboration.
Nice.
Krantz really wanted to collaborate, and that's all you can ask for. It's the best.
We were chatting a little bit before. Oh, go ahead, Robert. Sorry.
Fritz, I have a question. Maybe it's a bad question to ask, but were you there to the very end of the shoot? Or I remember something happened. You weren't. What happened? Something happened like the last 2 days or something, or I can't remember what.
Well, not to get deep into it, but it goes back to my approach to concept on making the film about the shrinking of the West, like the cowboys experienced as the West, the Wild West, was industrialized. The motorcycle rider was losing their area in which to exercise, to recreate, and to enjoy life. The outside was being squeezed by the building and property. So we did a lot of work with signage and showing you guys in front of new home construction and running up and down with the cows on the hills and doing these things that exemplified the West and then the shrinking of the West. And look, Courtney's here.
I had to get my girlfriend to figure out how to get on here, man.
Hey, you haven't missed
I
much.
couldn't get Chrome on my computer.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Gotcha.
well, welcome.
This is great.
Perfect.
Welcome, Courtney. Good to see you.
Hey, what's up, Robert? Good to see you, man.
Good to see you as well.
Fritz, I see you all the time nowadays.
I know. There's nothing new there. But you don't see Jim Holley, our stunt.
No, hey, Jim. Good to see you.
Hi, how are you?
Well, so go ahead, Fritz. You were explaining what happened at the end of the shoot.
Oh, so the cinematographer, Elliot Davis, who I selected from having worked with him on a previous film, who is now and has become a premier cinematographer in the United States. He shoots for Michelle Pfeiffer films. He's like a major domo in cinematography. He was fired by that producer from the major studio, the executive producer, because they felt we were not providing a genre picture. We're getting too arty. So they let him go. And then they brought in another guy who was a nuts and bolts shooter who I disagreed with a lot. And so it came down to a lot of friction about what kind of story needed to tell and what I was achieving. And they were very specific on the money side of things. We must be done on this day. So we have all this action to do. You're an art shithead, so we don't want you. Let's get Ernie to finish it up.
Right.
So I remember after finishing let's say we shot 30 days. I was like the 27th day,
Right,
I got
that's
the
what
walk
it was.
of shame, where the guy puts his arm around you and walks down the dirt road. And by the time you get to the end of the walk, you've been fired.
Yeah.
So I got that, and then talked a lot with Ernie about what the sequences of action were all about. And then he and Jim and everybody else went to work and did all of that fast, improvised, crazy, climatic action sequence ending. So, and then I wasn't in the editing really either. I helped kind of rough it in, but then they brought in another editor who followed the marching orders of the executive producer and cut together the film.
I'm really glad that you said this because I think it speaks to why we're even here having this interview. I know before we started, and I'll lay it out now for people now that we're recording, but because Robert had asked me the question about why winners take all specifically, right? And I think what you just said about, we sat down to watch this given the types of movies that we generally review on our show, expecting another genre picture, right? And what we found was a movie that actually had a lot of heart and realistic relationships and the interplay and the chemistry, which hopefully Courtney and Robert can talk to here in a minute about the chemistry between the core group of guys. It worked really well. That I think it elevated it above kind of what people sit down when they expect to sit and watch a motocross movie from the 80s. And I think what you intended really ended up shining through in the end.
Cool.
Yeah, I did have a question for you, Robert. So Bad Billy and Rick Mellon have like this really close relationship, and then Bad Billy ends up getting with
Cindy.
Cindy, yeah.
who's
Debbie Richter, yeah.
holy cow. She played her part so well because you just want to reach this screen and strangle her. You're like, you're such a bitch. But even after Cindy and Bad Billy get together, there's still this tension with Rick and Billy where they want to be friends still. And I guess how much of that do you contribute to like your two actors being able to work together, and how much of that is like writing and that really shone through to me, like that relationship was very strong, it felt like.
Well, I'll tell you, part of it was Fritz. I remember we were shooting a scene by the campfire, and it was just Don, Michael, Paul, and I remember we were, it wasn't working during rehearsal, and we're sitting there thinking, Fritz walks away, and we're trying to figure it out. You remember what you said, Fritz?
I was hungry.
No, he said, you guys are both looking at the fire, and it's becoming kind of mesmerizing to you. He said, stay away from the fire, just go to each other and stick with that relationship. Yeah. And then I think Don, Michael, Paul, and I talked quite a bit about, okay, how are we going to play this? How are we going to do it? And we really worked on it. I do remember one moment, at the end of the movies, Don and I really tried to work as hard as we could. And he turned to me at the end, and we'd given everything we had to it. And he said, Robert, we need a better piece of material. We've done everything we can with this. And I kind of, that always stuck in my head because I thought, whatever we try to do, you know, we put it all out there. And I know that there was the Courtney and Tony Longo, I think is his name.
Yep.
And
Bear.
they were really, they added a lot to that movie. They were really great. They brought a great energy to that movie that I think took the edge off of things and brought humor into it. And I know Tony's passed away, right?
Yeah.
A good guy, man. And DeLuise was great.
Yeah.
Courtney was great. Am I missing anybody? Was there one other person, Courtney?
Well, Kathleen.
I mean, in that group.
Oh, in that group, yeah.
Yeah, no, we were the comic relief. You got all the comedy guys.
Yeah, but Courtney, I thought your dynamic, just you, Peter, and Rick, the three of you in your scenes when you're working, you know, together and all that, it had a believable chemistry, right? Where it's sometimes in these movies it can be forced, right? Like, oh, aren't we the best of friends? But you guys seem to do it effortlessly. How'd that work?
Well, thanks. I mean, Peter and I hung out a lot, and obviously Peter went on to become a big TV star on 21 Jump Street and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Robert's right. They were kind of the serious guys. We were the comedy relief. And Robert I'm glad you brought up Longo because he was a wild man. You know, he was the youngest linebacker in NFL history. He played for the New York Jets for a few years, and he was very, very good. I remember seeing him. After him, they were like, you can't let guys 18 years old in the NFL or they're going to get wrecked, which is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And but so he was a wild man, and he was crazy. I remember him throwing Jello off the top of the roof at the crew when they came back to the hotel. He was wild, man. But yeah, it was good. You're right. It was good that we had the comic relief because you guys were kind of serious. You know, your character, Robert, was very serious. You know, your character was all business. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I remember Kathleen and Don Michael. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was the script. I don't know if it was their personalities, Fritz. But man, there was a lot of wrangling going on there. A lot of,
She's a very good actress, though, man. I saw her.
She is good, man.
The first time I saw her was in a movie that we called "Not My Kid." I went there to tape another friend I was in it. She had this monologue, and it was just fantastic. Where she was just talking about as a teenager drug use and all this stuff. And I was like, this girl is very talented. And then she ended up being in our film. She also ended up being a singer, as Bird York was her name musically. Check her out. So there's some good talent on this show, and that's Fritz. You know, Fritz. If you can go back to Show Corn, he's got a good record of finding good people, that go on to do good things.
Yeah, and their relationship, I admit, I was like rooting for it throughout the whole movie because there was just a certain awkwardness to it where it's like, all right, guys, just kind of do it already. Let's admit some things here and get it done, right? And then finally at the party, they go off and they kind of have their moment, which I thought was really fantastic. And to the point before where it didn't feel forced at all. A lot of times in a lot of movies, you're kind of trying to force that and force something together, and it just seemed really natural to me.
Yeah.
Fritz, did you ever get in between all that kind of between the two of them, or were you just away from it?
No. There were some outside issues that were going on within Kathleen's family that were health related that caused Robert to have some issues, Don Michael Paul to have some concerns and so forth. So there were behind the scenes things that were somewhat private, and it kept them comfortable but distant. And I think it shows in behaviors, subtle behaviors and so forth.
Right.
So you got a good memory, Fritz. You remember it.
Yeah, sure. But I will say this about remembering something. Back to that campfire thing.
Yeah.
That's a key. It's thematic. That's the theme scene, really. That's where you're getting into talking about each character's, concept of why they are part of the story and how they conflict and what the story will then become. You can't ride the mountain for fun. You are not professional and all those other things, if I remember that dialogue. And we rehearsed that a lot. in the dressing room. Then we took our time to shoot it. And then it worked and it was cool. And I was excited because it was, it just felt good. And then the producer, the genre producer guy, the big guy, was furious about the scene because the light from the campfire was across your pants, as opposed to not being across your pants, because the logic of the light would never touch your trousers. And he was just screaming how terrible it was and how I ruined the film.
Oh my God.
That was one of the wedges that drove me away
Wow.
from. Wait a minute. It's about content. It's not necessarily about aesthetics. We got to look at what these guys are doing. Don't watch the fire. Watch the behaviors. And it was very upset. And the fact that gas ran out, so it was not a continuous flame height during about a 2-minute conversation that took 3 hours to shoot.
Yeah.
So it jumped. It was stuff like that.
It felt so real, though. I mean, that's what I loved about it.
Yeah, and I was just going to ask you, because having directed films myself on a much, much smaller scale, I know that there are inevitably problems and challenges that are going to pop up. And so I'm curious, what were some of the biggest challenges that you were not expecting that popped up, and how'd you guys deal with those?
Oh, I'll tell you one right away, and I'm sorry to insert really quickly because it's really in Jim's area. Jim, you were with us in Dallas, weren't you?
Correct.
Remember when, gosh, he's a major contributor in the stunt world. He was doing the long motorcycle jump and he broke his back on the crash.
I just walked into the stadium when that happened.
Who was that?
Yeah, I think it might have been Gary Simmons, maybe.
No, this guy was married to big, tall, beautiful actress with brown hair who's great. And he's
Jack Gill. Might have been Jack Gill.
Jack Gill, yeah. Yeah, he broke his back on that crash. And then he broke it again later. And on another film I did, he was there in all good shape because he snapped it back.
Yeah. I love how beautiful, tall, blonde actress was the turning point there to remember. As if there's only like 1 or 2 of those in Hollywood.
Jim, do you remember there was 2 people that were, right when we were shooting it, that were like top of the game. Johnson was one of them.
Ricky Johnson.
And there was another guy, I think out of Virginia or somewhere.
David Bailey.
David Bailey.
And is he the one that got paralyzed?
Correct.
Yeah.
Ugh. Oh, that's sad.
That was so heavy. I think that happened right around when we were filming, and it was, boy, those 2 were so great.
Yeah.
Was the other guy, Johnson was his last name?
Yeah. Ricky Johnson, David Bailey.
Brock Glover.
Brock Glover. Brock actually was my teammate at the time at Yamaha, and he had a speaking part when he came out. It was out in Castaic, I think we were shooting, and he was all pissed off. He was riding, and they had a date somewhere, and he came up in a Corvette. And we all at the Supercrosses, we all got a big kick out of that when the movie came out. We always razz Brock about that.
A lot of people really underestimate the danger involved with motocross and with motorcycles and stuff. And I know another film we talked about, American Ninja. There's this motorcycle scene, and if you guys haven't seen it, basically it's the cleverly placed ramp that he jumps over a fence to get off the army base. But this guy comes straight down, and I'm surprised that the bike didn't just split in 2.
Well, like head into the triple clamp and
just an obnoxious thing. And it's what's the
how do you do a movie like this safely?
I mean, what's the key for the safety aspects?
Well, I think it's in rehearsal and things like that. I mean, you have to prepare for something like that. A lot of times when you're doing stunts, you don't have to do it anymore, tires, but, a lot of times things are written in, like to jump a police bike, a BMW RS 1200. Well, those aren't motocross bikes. They're really not made to jump.
Right.
And on another show, I jumped one and the foot pedal broke off. I almost crashed. I gathered it up. And this was just in rehearsal. I think it's anything in life. You need OPC to be successful, opportunity, preparation, and communication. You got to be prepared, and you got to look at what's going to happen, what's my ins, what's my outs, what could happen if this happened. And you just have to look at it all around different ways on things that you can make the scene successful.
Sure. Now, I know in some close-ups, Robert and Courtney, there you've got some shots of you guys riding in close, but how much riding did you actually do in the movie?
I think. Go ahead, Courtney.
I don't know. That's a good. I don't remember, but I could ride already. I wasn't a great rider, but I could ride a bike. I've been riding since I was like 13, 14.
Yeah.
So yeah, anytime we had to pull up and do stuff. But when you went on that real track at the Dallas Superdome and you saw how big those jumps were and things, you realized it's a whole nother level out there. I mean, no, like seriously, like those jumps he was talking about where that guy crashed, those jumps were over like 6-8 feet tall, and you had to do 3 of them and then hit this quick turn. And the guy hit his throttle stuck and he just went right up and over and flew like 15 feet into the wall of the Superdome.
Man.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah. So
And
go ahead, Chris.
like Jim said, that was during the last rehearsal that he requested relative to safety. I just want to make sure I can do this.
Yeah.
And
He was the only guy who could jump all 3 jumps like a pro and make that turn, and then he got injured.
Man.
Wow,
Yeah.
man.
The other guys could just do 2.
It's very hard when you have 20 guys out there in Supercross competing and you're jumping. We call it a triple. And like you said, when you're down and you to the face of it, you can't see the landing. You have to stick it on the backside. You have to make sure you land both wheels so you can use the front brake and rear brake to make the left-hand corner. Well, when you have a mechanical issue like Jack did and the throttle sticks, I don't care how much brake you have, and he hits the berm, that berm shot him to the wall. I mean, yeah, he could have passed away on something like that. You know, thank God he was able to walk away. He didn't walk away. It was the hospital, but he was okay after that.
I mean, that can make you like 5 inches shorter in a second.
Yeah.
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 It was intense.
Yeah.
it was tough. It was not the only accident. We had others.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I know the other guy who cased his motorcycle when he jumped over that road. That other stunt video. His dad was.
That was Richard Epper, and he broke his ankle. Came up short, and the reason why is normally I think he wears a size, I think it was a 10 or so boot, and they only had the 13.
Yeah.
So his ankle was and foot were swimming in the boot. So as soon as he cased that jump, his ankle rolled over and he broke his ankle.
Oh,
No kidding.
I call it the Benny Hill moment, where like you see him and he lands, he goes, "Oh!" and then John Michael Paul gets off the bike, all like, "Hey,
yeah.
no
Everything's
problem."
good. Yeah. And Robert, the scene I'm thinking about with you is there's that scene where Billy and Rick are doing where he's on the sidecar but he's balancing, right?
Yeah.
He's not. There's not a sidecar. He's doing the standing, leaning thing, which I didn't even know was a thing people did until I saw this movie. And there's some of these stunts where these guys, I mean, he's leaning out the side of this sidecar, and his head clears a telephone pole by about an inch. And there's some shots of you in close up, and I that's why it made me wonder how much of that were you doing?
Yeah, this is the part where an actor goes. Tries to insinuate that he did a lot of his own stunts. And let me be 100% clear about it. No fucking way. Let me be more blunt about it. Ernie Orsatti and/or Fritz came to me and said, "Do you know how to ride?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." I had never been on a motorcycle in my life. It was, I swear to you, I think it was like the dead of winter, and I went up to Big Bear with my girlfriend, and I went to some place that rents, and I said, "I just got to get on a motorcycle." He's like, "You can't ride." I go, "Hey." So there I am, just trying to figure out what the heck I'm going to do. And God bless Ernie, because they took me out to the track at one point, he gave the thing, and he just looked at me for a second, and I know, and everything inside of him said, "Oh, jeez." But he didn't say a word. I did none of it. They did all of it.
Yeah.
I sucked at riding. Just want to give that out.
At a minimum, you had to at least know how to sit on the bike and look like you've done that before, right?
Okay, let me address that for a second. Fritz, let's see if you can back me up on this, Fritz. Do you remember when I went to the hospital, Fritz?
Oh.
Yeah. So let me tell you what happened. Thank God you're so kind, Fritz. So I'm sitting on the motorcycle, as you just said, and all I got to do is hit it and start. That's all I got to do. Somehow, when the gear came up, it came up again, not on my foot, my heel, my foot. It came up right on my leg, my shin. Oh. And it felt like it broke, and it got logged in there. It's on tape. I mean, it just even go.
Oh no!
So, there you go. And I think what happened was they told me before I got on their motorcycle, it's a little temperamental. I didn't know. I ended up in the hospital that night.
Got it.
It'll come up and bite you.
It bit me. But
so even in some, because there's a couple different scenes where you guys have some full-on brawls and melees, and a guy gets suplexed into a truck, and you know all of that stuff. So I mean, even for the fighting stuff, I mean, did you handle that a little bit better?
I remember when we were in the hallway with Tony Longo, and oh my God, we were too young. We were too young actors. There was too many young actors and too much testosterone in the hallway that night.
Yeah.
And I just remember tempers got flared, and I'm thinking, oh my God, come on, we can act this. We don't have to be this. You remember that scene in the hallway, Fritz?
Gotcha.
Little testy.
And I remember all I remember is Tony Longo's last line is, "Are you kidding me? He could have taken all of this and threw it out the window."
Oh yeah, I bet. Well, I mean, it's a
Superdome, man. I remember the Superdome. We shot 20 straight hours. It's the longest day of shooting I've ever done, ever. And then I remember we had to go home, go to the hotel, get our stuff, and get on a plane. Which nowadays, as an actor, we like, no, I'm going home and sleeping.
That was the genre producer.
Interesting.
Remember that one part where we came down and we jumped into where the bull was, into the side of the trailer?
Yes, I remember that well. That was the change we did after Fritz got fired, which I thought was not great, which is why Peter DeLuise and I decided, when there's a bull in there, we decided to say, this is bull.
Yeah.
That was our statement to how we thought things were going at that point. Because I think it was really unwarranted that Fritz got fired, and he's a good director, and I think history's proven that. Time has proven that. With we're doing the 40th anniversary of Children of the Corn conventions all over the world right now.
Yeah,
stuff like that. Things he's done that have held up. So
well, and I'm glad
it was pretty lame that they just fired him and they just let the stunt guy direct the last few days, and they just made all these changes. And I thought it was kind of lame.
No, it's
hey Fritz,
I remember
do you remember there was a scene where Don Michael Paul, somebody's telling him a line, the Mitsubishi bike does ABCD, whatever the bike was, and Don Michael Paul's on a medium shot of him, and he's just listening, goes, basically it's a piece of shit. That wasn't in the script. But do you remember that, Fritz?
Yes, at that show, that
right.
introduction of the show, where we were talking about what's his name's improvisations, Paul Hampton's improvisations, and he came up with a line after that woman, that this demonstrator woman, the tall blonde woman, said what she said about the motorcycle, it'll blow you away. Mm-hmm. And then he said in kind of a semi-sexist way, "Don't you just love her diction?" It really was about her physicality.
Fritz,
remember that?
At the very beginning, when I get off, a bus, and I show up and there's nobody there.
That's right.
And I remember there was a song by that lady who sings "You're So Vain."
Oh, yeah.
And
Carly Simon.
Yeah.
Carly Simon. She had a song called "A Hero in Your Own Town," or something about a hero in your own town. And I listened to that a million times because it was about somebody who was back as a hero, but nobody cares about you anymore. And I listened to that over and over again. And so I get off this bus, and Paul's with me, and he walks up, and he said a line that, again, wasn't in the script, but he was so funny. He's yelling at somebody he says, "Where are the people? Where are the people?" That was kind of the gist of the scene. And he goes, "Could you have had a damn divorcee here?" It was so great. He was great. I mean, he really did fill in that gap. Drove me crazy, but man, he was good at that stuff.
Don drove up from Austin to move his son in and told me he was going to be on the campus, so I went down to meet him. His son is studying film at the university, and that was the department I taught in. So I introduced him to the chair, and he brought up Paul Hampton. As we spent most of the day together, and he brought him up, and I said, "Didn't you punch him? Actually punch him?"
It was me.
It was you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
But Fritz, it's in the film.
yeah.
So what happened was, let me see how tactfully I can say this. Paul was very hyper and excited. If he, how can I express it, Fritz? He had issues.
He contributed a lot.
Yeah. So what happened was, the word got out. Hey, be careful! Don't touch his nose. Just like, don't touch his nose. And I'm like, all right, whatever. I'm not gonna touch his nose. Like, all right. And so we're in the car, and we're freezing the car, and he's got the air conditioning cranked up to 100 for God knows whatever those reasons were. And I'm like, dude, can you crank down the AC? And he's like, all right, the man wants the AC cranked down. Let's just crank down the AC. You know?
Oh my gosh.
Every time we go to do a scene, he didn't know what he was gonna say.
Yeah.
So it gets to the end of the movie, and we're up on the hill. I can't even remember what the scene was. We're up on the hill, and I think I've been telling Fritz, this guy is driving me nuts the whole film. And all of a sudden, he comes up, and I think he goes to grab me in the scene or something. And as I turn, he got too close to me, and whap! I just nailed his nose, and you hear him scream, "Oh my God!" It was the best moment of that movie for me, man. God.
That's
That
great.
guy was just, but I can see why you hired him, Fritz, actually. I really do.
No,
He was-
he was in Lady Sings the Blues, and quite a few other films. After our film, he did a film with Bogdanovich. He's very accomplished, but his real skills, his real interest was in music, and he had recorded and published a number of songs and been in the rock and roll business in the early 60s and was known for a number of things. But he was a very unique actor in that he really was very organic. He would say stuff that was the intent of the speech, but it was not necessarily the speech, and it made everybody wonder, when is it my turn to join the conversation?
Exactly.
That's a good way to put it.
And
Nice.
he was very good at giving a kind of a personal perspective on the speech or on the speeches, but it was confusing as hell. Because
Be kind.
editorially, it also didn't match up.
Yeah.
And so it made things a little bit more difficult, although at that point of the film, I wasn't really involved with the editing.
Yeah, so I'm curious what you guys think now when you look back at a movie like this, and part of what we talk about on the show are movies that critics kind of discarded, right, and maybe don't have great scores with critics. But this is a movie that's clearly connected with audiences. Before we ever did it, we had people emailing the show, writing in, "You got to do winners take all. You got to do winners take all." So what is it you think? What is it about this movie or movies like this where they can clearly connect with an audience, but for whatever reason the critics kind of dismiss it?
It's hard to say. The critics will look at a finished film with an absence of knowledge on how the film came together. So they're inspired by the film to think creatively and what if this happened? So they fill in the blanks. You could have made this. Well, no one starts out to make a film that is crappy. We all start out to make Gone with the Wind. But the compromises and the issues of production and all the things that we've joked and laughed about come to play, and they do, let's use the word, modulate the outcome. They affect it, and you can't always do everything. So sometimes critics get into areas where they are not respectful of the process. They just look at the outcome and saying, you didn't do what you do. But then later, people forget process and they look at content, they look at thematics, they look at the characters, they look at things and say, hey, this actually has some heart. It may not be the most brilliantly sounding film or looking film, but historically, if we look back on some of the cool, silent films, my gosh, they're genius pieces of work.
Yeah.
But at the time, they lacked this, that, so forth. Critics, dug into them. So I think that's it.
What I think is they were looking at 80s B movies during the 80s, and they were like, these are B movies.
Right.
These are nothing. But now, as time's gone on, 80s movies have become a whole thing, like they don't make them like that anymore.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
People love the innocence of them and the fun of them and the raunchiness of them that are not politically correct now, not the kind of movies they make now. So I think that's why. And then Alex is the perfect example. By the way, I got to represent. I'm wearing a shirt he remade from the movie with the goose on it.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so I'm representing today. That's all Alex. But, he's the one who made me realize there's a whole group of people out there that are motorcycle fanatics who absolutely love this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. So thank you, Alex, for putting this all together.
Yeah.
Yes,
thanks,
thank you.
Alex. Hey, and
Alex.
Courtney, I like that. That's HRP. That's Hanna Racing Products. Bob Hanna. He made that jersey. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Alex, what would you say as a fan of the movie? Why do you like it?
Do you know, I think Winner's Take All to me is a bit like the Rocky movies to other people, where people want to do boxing. For me, watching it as a child, I was only 7 years old at the time. But growing up, watching this movie just made me want to play motocross bikes. And the friendships in this movie are just amazing. You want to have friends like Goose and Wally and Rick Mellon or Bad Billy. As a child, it was just amazing to watch. And I watched this movie until it was completely worn out of VHS. It was amazing. And the proof now, I'm sitting here, I'm 45 years of age, and we have loads of motorcycles, including the ones that were in that movie. These are just iconic to me, including all the props from this movie. It's just an amazing, amazing movie. I love it to bits.
He's done an amazing job putting this stuff together, the bikes and the helmets, and it's incredible what he's done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stuff back there.
And part of this, you guys kind of talked about with the 80s films and them not really existing anymore. That's kind of part of the reason our entire show exists, right? Because we looked back. I mean, I used to go over to James's house here, and we used to watch these films. Yep. We used to sit there and watch these and talk about them and kind of live them out and dream about it and stuff. And and now that we've gotten older, we're looking back going, these were awesome. And this is just awesome being able to talk to you guys about this, just hearing some of this stuff. Yeah, this was one of those movies because we had watched so many that the first thing I thought after I watched Winners Take All was, how in the world did I miss this in the 80s? Like, I don't understand how I thought I saw everything. And so, just to me, I was immediately like, I have to tell everybody about this flick because it really resonated. So I didn't even have the help of nostalgia. Sometimes people go, oh, well, you're looking at that movie a little bit better than you should because you saw it as a kid. For me, I was already in my 40s and I still reacted that way to it. So.
And I only saw it as a kid.
Yeah, and he only saw it.
Yeah,
as a kid. So.
Yeah, and I was.
By the way, you guys, as a side note, if you feel that way about the 80s movies, go look at another film that I did right before this called Paradise Motel.
Okay. Absolutely. It's on the list.
Has this same type of, I was fortunate enough to go from that to this, where it was about, I think for me, now having, done films, all that stuff, I think it comes down to two things for me at the end of the day. One is the relationships you have. Mm-hmm. The friendships. I'm not a transitional kind of person that goes, I did a film with them and I'm never going to talk to them again. Or, I try and tell everyone, look, at least once a year, let's try and talk, or even if it's once every 10 years, just so it means something down the line. And then the other thing is, I think if I had to put it into one word, I got asked in an interview on the last film, what did you want people to get out of this? And I said, hope. Yeah. And I think that to me is, for the movies especially that I'm doing now, you want people to go away feeling better about their lives, period. Yeah. You want them to go to a movie and feel better that they can get up tomorrow and go do that 9-to-5 job or go to college and try and do something there, or whatever they're doing with their life, be better in their marriage, be better, just feel better about life. If you do those two things, I think you have a successful career.
Well put, Rob.
Yeah, and I think to that end, right, I think, that's what we like about movies is we have that burn of life going on, right? And the movies kind of give us a way to release and kind of forget about what's going on in life, for a little bit anyway. And that's what I love about this movie, right? I think we were talking before we kind of got on here about, I was on the episode we did on the movie, and when James told me about it, I'm like, oh, okay, you know, I like to watch motocross growing up in the late 80s, early 90s. I'd have it on ESPN, but I'm like, okay, how good is this movie going to be, right? Might be kind of a whatever, it's a movie, right? No, I love it because you have that entertainment value, right? That I don't think movies today necessarily always capture that piece of it. You have that camaraderie, whether whether it was behind the scenes, or not. You could definitely see it, on set, right? As you guys were interacting and kind of giving your lines and talking to each other, and you got the feeling from Bad Billy that he was torn, right? He's like, man, I just took Rick's girlfriend, who was my girlfriend, but Rick's been my best bud since I think it was like the 6th grade or what, So you had that dynamic that just kind of sucks you in and gets you involved in the movie, and I think it's very relatable, kind of the issues the characters went through.
Yeah,
that was intended for sure. We worked on all that stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I guess what I'd like to ask, and you kind of spoke to what you hope people take away from it, but if you guys could tell me, when you look back now, 30, 40 years to when you made, I should say, Winners Take All, what do you take away from the experience? What's your ultimate takeaway from having been part of this?
I think for me, the stunts, Ernie Orsatti was a good coordinator, great coordinator. Noon was working. There was a lot of great stunt people on this movie. I know Debbie Evans, she was doubling the lead. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it. But for me, I like going back and looking at movies. Like I said, I'm leaving tomorrow to go to Japan, and I'll probably watch it on the airplane going over.
Awesome. Sweet.
And I remember one part when Bear rode the little mini bike into the pool, and I'm thinking, how in the hell did this big guy get on this bike and ride it in there? And then the girl showed her boob. To me, that was awesome. I thought, that's motorcross, Supercross.
That's timeless. I mean, there you go.
I love that scene for so many reasons.
Oh yeah, you just reminded me of something. That scene with Cindy. Is it Cindy? Was that her name?
Debbie Richter's character.
Debbie Richter's character.
Debbie Richter.
Yeah.
I guess it was originally written that she wasn't supposed to have a top on or something like that. And we're about to shoot it, and she's like, I'm having my top on. And it got really uncomfortable for I'm like, oh my God, why are they thinking about this now? Like, wasn't this all? And she won the argument. Fritz, do you remember that? Oh, that's right. You were pushing for the top to come off.
I had scissors. The issue was one of character respect, and I sided with her against the genre guy, against the producer who wanted to include the nudity and the craziness of teenage behaviors in this wild world of motocrossing and representing something that may or may not be true. I had asked the managers of the motocross guys about what it's like to deal with 17, 19-year-old kids in hotel rooms where they're like rock stars and tearing them up and being out of control. And he said, not at all. These guys are very serious athletes. They go to bed at night and do all these things.
Yeah.
So with that and her change on a contractual stipulation, she was contractually stipulated. It was there that she would do nudity, and that we were prepared with a stand-in kind of, a second. I just respected the fact that she was more worried about a personal relationship and how this might affect her life. And I thought, that's more important than a movie.
Absolutely.
And, it's really not true. So we don't have it in the film. We can go back and we can editorially do some tricks and stuff like that and keep your respect. I just don't feel it important to.
Certainly.
It's one of those things that I guess looking back, it really wasn't missed. It didn't take away from not having it. So
No. It brings it down to drive-in when you start doing that.
Yeah. Right.
It's fun. it's funny. I missed a lot of the drama that Robert and Fritz experienced on the shoot. I really did. It was very comfortable for me because I'd already worked with Fritz before, and my mentor Virgil Fry was in it. He played the motorcycle shop owner, so that was great for me too because he's the guy who broke me into the business and taught me my craft. And I had a good time. And shooting at the Dallas Superdome to me was an absolutely amazing experience. When we were shooting while they were actually racing, it was unbelievable. And to be down on the track like that and watch these guys was fantastic. So
awesome.
Other than Fritz getting fired at the end, for me, it was a really good experience.
Great.
Yeah.
Robert, what do you ultimately take away from your time doing this?
Fritz and I hadn't talked for years. He called me recently regarding another project, and it was really great to reconnect with him. And it brought back a lot of great memories. And I had a really good time on that shoot. But one of the things you learn, that was my second leading role. And one of the things you learn, and that film taught me, is you're a young actor and you're like, oh, I got to lead, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden you get on the set and it's like, okay, now you have to service that part.
Yeah.
And it requires discipline, sleep, preparation. And about the third or fourth day of film, you're like, I remember in the first film I did where I was lead at Paradise Motel, I'm walking down the hallway talking to the other actor who was the co-lead and saying, wow, this is really hard.
Yeah.
And you once you learn that in your young life, and that film taught me it because it was, I think it was 30 days where you just have to really, and we were shooting Courtney, those were day for nights, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the first time I'd ever done that, where your hours are all turned around and everything. And so it really taught me the discipline of a movie that, yes, it's great you got it, but you have to service that deal and do the best you can. Right. And I just remember pouring everything I had into that. And then also the friendships that I took away. I don't see Don Michael Paul that much anymore, but we had a great friendship. Kathleen Wilhite, what Courtney said before, she is not only a phenomenal actress, but a phenomenal singer too.
Wow.
And just, we ended up having the same agent. She was incredible. I mean, she's so talented. I had a great time working with her. We didn't have a lot of scenes together. And then Fritz was, and I got to know Peter a little bit. We did another film. And Tony, it was just good. They were good people and good friendships.
And from what I understand, Don went on to be a director himself, right?
Yeah. Up in Canada, he's been directing TV for a long time. He directed me on a USA show. I can't remember the name of the show. So their first big hit, and it's pretty cool getting to work with him as a director.
I bet.
I think that was his thing, writing and directing.
Seems like it. He really, once 21 Jump Street was over, he did one other series, and after that, he pivoted to directing and never looked back.
Yeah, no, you could kind of tell that was his thing.
Yeah.
I remember I took my date to see the film when it came in the theaters, and she's like, "He's gorgeous."
Oh, great!
I wasn't in the
home
movie
now.
Well, Fritz, I'm glad you were able to come back. Just so as we kind of wrap things up here, I'd love to hear just ultimately what you take away from your experience making this movie.
Well, that's a really hard question because making a film is such a learning process. I mean, it's a continuous arc of experience and improvements over what you did. And I think this was one of the early films I was able to be part of. And I think it was a lot of, besides the process of making the film, I think it was learning a lot about how the distributors and the business side looked at the products you make. And that you could go in as a creative individual and be at complete odds with the fiscal, financial, the business side. And you are not necessarily making something that is as creative as you think. So you start off with a lot of energy with great people around and you get everything you can do. And then you find that, wow, this is really a business that we're in. And it's not about necessarily just the best actors, the best scene work, this or that. It's really about how they approach the people that buy tickets and how to get those people who buy tickets to buy more tickets.
Right.
It's business. And I think that was the big eye-opener on this.
Right.
And it was also a very complicated, we were all over Southern California in locations. We had different units with the action and the drama. We had traveled to Dallas and the Giant Stadium filled with how many, like 40,000 people at one point or something during the race, and had control of those people. That was a terrific time. I got to go out and direct like 40,000 people in one section of the stands at one point. That was cool. That was empowering. That was like being a Nazi, you know? It was huge. But to walk away with things, I think it was just added to the canon of knowledge on process and experiences, positive and negative.
Yeah.
You know, James, I want to add one thing to what I said before now that Fritz is back. So after we made the film, a couple of years later, I think it was probably, I don't know, I can't remember, 7, 8 years later, I got married. And Fritz came to the wedding, and we showed a, I don't know, 10 or 15 minute, my family, her family, how we met, yada, yada.
Great video.
And so Fritz, at the end of it, we were talking, and he said, what are you doing next? I said, well, I'm thinking of producing and writing and acting my own film now. I said, but I don't know. I'm so nervous. I don't know if I know how to do it. And I don't know. I was second guessing myself. And Fritz said, I'll never forget. He said, Bob, that video you showed that everyone was crying at tonight, it's the same thing. It's just adding moments together, one after another. And I swear to you, I ended up making the film. It's called Do You Want to Dance?
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was what it's always stuck in my head.
Wow.
Just keep adding the moments together. Funny moment, sad moment, questionable moment. Just keep adding these moments together and build on them. And he just narrowed it down to that. Just do that and you're going to be good.
Yeah.
But I got to add something to that, Robert. I got to insert. At your wedding, and I'll never forget this, your best man was Kevin Bacon, I think.
He was a groomsman.
Groomsman. Okay, old friend of yours, and I'm in awe. Fuck me, it's Kevin Bacon. So we're goofing off at the wedding, doing different things, and I'm in the men's room, and you're in the men's room, and Kevin Bacon comes in, and I just finished at the urinal, or he had just finished, or something like that, and you said, would you like to meet Kevin Bacon? Shake hands. No, dude. There's a cutoff. Okay, you're Kevin motherfucking Bacon, but sorry, guys.
Maybe later. Yeah.
You know, you say that Kevin Bacon was actually my best man and your groomsman as well.
It was a cardboard cutout. Yeah. No. Well, I'm glad you said that. Oh, go ahead.
That film I told you about, Paradise Motel, my best man actually was the guy who was the co-lead in that, and there's a phenomenal story that I posted online about how that happened, and it was one of those, as we say in faith-based films, a God moment. It was one of those moments that I tell people about that happens, and you just can't explain it, but it's a great story behind that.
Awesome. Well, that's a perfect segue because before we head out, I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to just update fans on anything that you've got going on currently. I know, Courtney, you mentioned you guys are going on the 40th anniversary tour this year right now for Children of the Corn, which is got to be awesome to get out and meet all those people, you know, that are huge fans of that movie.
Yeah, I've been doing conventions for about, 20 years, and this is my last run. And if I do like 3 or 4 a year, it's good. We're doing about 15, 16 this year. So it's been very, very busy.
Wow.
The biggest highlight is we got invited to the Stygius Film Festival in Spain, which is a huge sci-fi and horror festival. So that's kind of going out on top with that one. And then just been working. Did a movie called Infernal. Did another movie called Quiet Ones. About to do a movie called Barn 3. Where I'm playing the lead, which is different for me.
Oh, nice.
And,
Sweet.
So I've been keeping busy and also doing music. Put out a record last year called Safe Haven that you can find at fakefangs.com if you want to hear the record for free, and you can download it or get a CD. And doing a lot of recording lately. So just keep being creative, man. That's what I do.
Well, that's awesome, man.
Hey, I got something I wanted to show Alex real quick.
Yeah.
I just found this picture in my trophy room. I don't know if you guys can see it right there, but there's the pink deer.
Oh, go down a little bit.
Down.
Oh, yeah, there's the pink.
All right.
I felt bad that he had all that gear, and I'm going, shit, do I have anything from the show?
That's awesome.
And Robert, I saw that there was a resurgence lately as far as when I looked at your filmography. There was a bit of a break, and now you've been making films in recent years. What do you got working right now?
What happened was my wife and I, condensed the story, we ended up having triplet boys.
Oh, wow.
And
Wow.
they almost passed away when she was pregnant.
Oh, man.
And so it was just by the grace of God that they were born. They were born, I think, all around 3 pounds.
Ooh.
And so I stopped for 15 years just because I did not want to be like the guys that I ended up writing in a lot of my screenplays who let work take over their life. And then once their children were grown, it's like that time's gone. You're not going to get it back.
Right. Yep.
It's a constant theme in the stuff that I write about. And so I stopped for 15 years, and that was my focus. I started my company, Alinas Multimedia, but I just focused on being a great father and a great husband. That was it. And I didn't know if I'd ever make a movie again. And then they were sophomores in high school. And I wrote something, and I thought, okay, I think they're old enough now, because they didn't even know what I did. I think I can go make this. So I made this film called Christmas with the Perunzises. And I came home after and I was home every day. I'd come home at night, drive the kids to school. It wasn't like I was gone. But on the last day of filming, I came home. My son George had written a note on the front door, and it said, "Are you done yet?" And that was his way of telling me, I need you here. I need your full attention.
Yeah.
So I stopped again for 3 more years. And I said to my wife, I said, when they go to college, I'll try and, God, I thought, is anyone going to give a damn about anything I do at that point? But I ended up writing a film called Faith, Hope, and Love.
Yeah.
Ended up getting bought by Netflix. It's on YouTube and Amazon
Awesome.
everywhere, and it went all around the world. It did extremely well for me. And then I wrote, produced, and directed that and acted in it. And then after that, I just finished a film a couple of years ago. It's now been released called A Marriage Made in Heaven with Tom Arnold, Vivica Fox, and Gordon Bernstein.
That just came out a couple months ago on, was it Netflix or Amazon?
Yeah.
It's kind of everywhere at this point.
Okay.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. So those are the and then I did end up making Do You Want to Dance, that film I told you about before. But
Yes.
My focus now is really on doing faith-based films. That's where, like I said about giving people hope. That's
Awesome.
kind of what I'm doing.
It's awesome.
Well, I really appreciate that, man, for sure. And then, Jim, you said you're heading out to Japan?
Yep, leaving tomorrow. Had some guys in town during July and August from Yamaha Japan, working with them. And I've been over there in 2019, so I want to go see some people and visit them. Then I get back, go see the grandkids again. But yeah, she's staying busy. But I got to get off to take care of some stuff. Robert, good seeing you. Alex, Martin, when I
Good
get
seeing
over to the UK, I'll look you up. Courtney, good seeing you. Fritz, good seeing you guys. And James and the boys in the studios, I'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
And then Fritz, if just to update the fans, I know you're heading on your tour this year as well, but anything else you'd like people to know about what you've got going on?
What can I say? I got into academics, so I taught university and started university film product programs for 20 years, and worked as a professor and those kind of things. And we decided about 2 years ago to go back to making films like Robert. We have other issues in our life that are more important, particularly family and things. So we take advantage of the opportunities, and the academic world was a good way to negotiate, making sure that I was around the kids and that kind of stuff.
Fritz is being a little humble. He pretty much made the Oklahoma film community what it is today, and now a lot of things are being shot out there. And most people that are out there,
that's awesome.
He trained in college and now working the crews and stuff out there in Oklahoma. So he made a big difference in the film industry.
That's very cool.
I park their cars, Courtney.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I'm certain that fans of the movie are going to, love to know what you guys have been up to and what you're currently up to. So I appreciate it. And just to say, on behalf of the guys here, thank you for giving us some time today and bearing with us through the technical side of things as we got things kicked off. But I'm just thrilled. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you guys.
Anytime.
Absolutely.
Good to see Robert. Good to see Alex. Face to face. Courtney.
And Alex, thank you for making this happen, man. Honestly, we appreciate you.
Oh, absolutely.
This is a dream come true. So thank you so much. Thank you, Courtney. Everybody, I just can't thank you enough.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank all of you. Thank you, Alex.
Of course. All right, gentlemen.